or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a really exciting video today where I'm going to share with you my personal curriculum in order to learn how to write a novel. For anyone who is new to this channel, hi, my name is Kara. I am a newly aspiring author. I have recently decided that I am going to write a book, having never written anything creatively in my life. This is a completely new journey for me. I have never written creatively before, other than like writing in my journal, and I have a lot to learn, and I am sat. I am ready, okay? I am so happy this trend is going around right now with building personal curriculum because I feel like it so deeply resonates with me. I am someone who loves to learn. I love it. I loved learning in school. I felt like my mind was like ever expanding, ever growing. It felt like I could never run out of things to learn. And then you graduate school and you realize that no one is pushing you to learn anything except yourself. And if you don't have any drive to learn anything, you don't have to learn anything for the rest of your life if you don't want to, okay? And that was a difficult realization to come to. I think it took me a really long time to realize that no one is coming to save me except myself. So I am fully taking my life into my own hands. I am diving into writing this novel, and I have built this personal curriculum to help me learn how to write a novel. I know that you do not have to have a Master of Fine Arts in order to become a novelist. Anyone can do it. And I've decided I'm just going to self-direct myself and learn how to write a novel. I have signed up for a community ed course with my local city and my local school system, which was really cheap. And like, it's an 8-week course about learning how to develop a writing habit, which starts this week, which kind of prompted this whole personal curriculum thing. So I'm going to be sharing with you the Notion page that I created for this personal curriculum. I have a bunch of suggested reading, of resources, of books that I am planning on reading, and books that are directly related to my genre that I am going to be writing in. Let's get into it. Okay, everyone, so here is my Notion page. I've decided to call my course The Foundations of Writing, and this course is going to be taking place from today through basically the end of the year. I have split the course up by weeks and like different lessons and the themes that I want to be learning for each week, but honestly, there is no timeline on this. These are just arbitrary dates. This is just kind of like my hub of like my foundations of writing personal curriculum. Okay, there's no hard dates on this by any means. So I first wanted to start with some objectives because that's kind of how classes work, right? You need learning objectives. So the couple things that I really want to learn throughout this time, first and foremost, is to build a consistent writing practice. This whole thing isn't possible if I don't sit down and actually do the work and actually do the writing. I need to create a consistent writing practice that does not feel daunting to me. I mean, writing's always going to be daunting, but something that feels good to me. I don't want it to be kind of this like forceful I have to do that. You know, like I don't want it to feel burdensome to me to have to sit down and write. And I know some days will be like that, but I want to build like a healthy, consistent writing practice throughout this whole time. So that's like number one. The second one is just like a very overview intro to writing craft, learning what style, tone, imagery, like learning all of those basics of like linguistic techniques and like language techniques. I don't even know if that's like the right term. I have a handful of books on writing craft that I want to read. And again, this stuff can't come to fruition if I don't actually practice it. So it's going to be kind of like a learn something, apply it, learn something, apply it kind of mentality. And then the last objective that I want to do is just study plot, study story structure, study like the building blocks of how to write a novel. So my genre that I want to be writing in, that I believe this story is going to go in, is romantasy. So I am going to be pulling some of my favorite books from romantasy, from classic literature, and from fantasy in order to like actually study the story structures, study the character arcs, study the plot structure of my favorite books in this genre in order to help me craft my own story. And then over here, I kind of have these notes pages. Basically, this is just like my note taking if I want to, you know, like I've just kind of put plot, characters, world building there of like basically notes that if I find any inspiring quotes or, you know, anything that I want to look more into. So now I have kind of like all of the resources that I have compiled in order to direct my self-study. All of these are reflected in my lessons below. So I made this cute little like gallery Notion view for each week, and each image here represents kind of like the theme of the week. So I'll go to this table because this is kind of where the bread and butter is. So the first week I'm going to be doing like an introduction to writing craft. I have like suggested reading. There is so much here. I am fully aware that this is way too much for me to actually read within a 10-week span or whatever it is. I'm kind of just going to be like, again, self-directed, seeing what calls to me, what doesn't call to me. I'm not going to be forcing myself to read anything, forcing myself to do anything in this. This is just honestly very self-directed, what feels good to me in order of progressing my learning here. So I have just kind of like a handful of resources of like, okay, introduction to writing craft. I want to read several short sentences on writing by Verlyn Klinkenborg, which I already completed. Took me like 2 days to read, and it was a great foundational book about writing. I will say it was quite pretentious. Kind of had to take that one with a grain of salt. Other books that I want to be reading during this first week are the second half of On Writing. I've gotten through the memoir part of On Writing by Stephen King, but the second half is kind of where the writing advice comes into play. And then the other one is Dear Writer by Maggie Smith. This one's another more of like kind of like a compilation of essays about writing and writing craft and being an author and learning to write and all that kind of stuff. And then the entire time of this course, I'm not only going to be taking that like my community developing a writing habit community class every week, but I also want to be going through Brandon Sanderson's sci-fi fantasy lecture series on YouTube. If you don't know, Brandon Sanderson's a huge sci-fi fantasy author, and he teaches classes at BYU every year, and he records them for free and puts them on YouTube. And it's like the most generous thing in the entire world. And literally I can take a college course on YouTube from my favorite author, okay? It's pretty incredible. I've kind of mirrored Brandon Sanderson's course online in terms of like the themes that I'm going to be taking on each week. I've kind of added my own flair to it as well. But you know what? This is kind of just my framework was his lecture series and adding my own material on top of that. So the first few lectures that he has are plot and like story structure, basically learning how to progress a storyline, how to give a good payoff, just a basic character arcs. The couple readings that I have to go along with this week are Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which is a super popular plot structure, story structure book in the writing community. I also have The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. This was recommended by Christy Ann Jones. She is a writer who puts her stuff on YouTube, and she actually did an entire personal curriculum for new authors. So I have taken a lot of inspiration from that video as well and gotten a lot of the resources from that video, which I've linked right here. This is a book about how to become a storyteller, how to tell stories in general. So these two I think are going to be really pertinent in terms of learning plot. And then the fantasy book that I want to go along with it to kind of like learn how to apply the plot structure. I want to reread Akotar again. And I also want to reread Fable. Christy has recommended before in her videos that if you are a new aspiring author and you have a book idea, take your top 3 favorite books and like literally study them. Go and write down the story beats, like write down XYZ happened in the beginning. Then you get a flashback and you like literally plot out the story and actually study the story. And for me, Sarah J. Maas in general is huge inspiration and someone who I really admire her fantasy romance kind of like world building and like stuff like that. So I am definitely taking inspiration from her and wanting to like actually study those books. And another one is R.F. Kuang. She is like, oh, I think she is truly one of my favorite authors of all time. Love her books, and I think that Fable is probably one of my favorite books I've ever read, and I really want to just like study the plot structure of this book as well. So again, this is like, here's a list of suggested reading. Whatever floats your boat, you read during this week, but then we'll be watching the YouTube videos for Brandon Sanderson and going to my in-person writing class too. And now kind of going down the line here, the other kind of things that I want to work on are characters, character creation, character arc. I've never read The Name of the Wind, but I know it is a fantasy book with a huge character arc, very deep character dive. And then Chrissy Jones recommended The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot in order to like build characters through figurative language. I am definitely someone who I feel like I lean more towards enjoying purple prose. And I know that by reading poetry and learning from poets, I will be able to implement that into my own writing as well. The next module I have is world building. So along with listening to Sanderson's lectures, I want to consider reading When the Moon Hatched. This is the book out of any book that has inspired me the most for my story. The writing style, the characters, the world building. This is like probably the most perfect fantasy romance I've ever read in my life. And I am fully taking a ton of inspiration from this book. So this is, I know I will be reading this book during the world building because the world in this is insane. And also like the prose in that book is incredible too. So I know this will be a book that I will be studying in terms of taking inspiration for my novel. And then the other books that I'm taking inspiration from in terms of like physical world building, like world building on our planet, is The Secret History, because this is like the most dark academia you could ever get. This book is absolutely stunning. And not only is it just like physical world building, dark academia in general, but like also like all of the literary craft in here. Beautiful, spectacular, amazing. I know my book is going to be set in an academic setting, so I know that this book is going to be huge in terms of inspiration for me. And I also want to read The Great Gatsby. The like metaphor in this book and just kind of like the way that like the atmosphere is created is absolutely stunning. I haven't read this book since high school, but like when I was thinking about like creating an atmosphere I really, really want to like be in, this book came to mind immediately. And then the last module I have is more like literary craft, like introduction to literary craft. Now I know that again, you could literally take college courses on like perspective, tone, style, like all figurative language, all of that could literally be a master's degree, okay? But I'm just doing like a very like beginner overview of all of this stuff. Christy Jones recommended a ton of books. Like her video is literally all about like figurative language, tone, style, and like really specifically looking at writing craft. So I took a lot of inspiration from her. She recommended The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. And then I've also seen that Steering the Craft by Ursula K. Le Guin is another great book about like literary craft in general, and kind of like, I mean, they're very short books, like very brief overview of it. And again, this is going to be reading and applying, reading and going back to my writing and learning how to do this. Do you know what I mean? And then other books that I'm inspired by, The Night Circus and The Bell Jar. The Night Circus, again, really creating that atmospheric environment, a very inviting environment that I feel like Erin Morgenstern creates so beautifully. And I want to kind of like bring that kind of like ethereal atmosphere quality into the book that I'm writing. So I know this book is going to be really big inspiration for me, and I want to like actually study how she does this. And then another book for more studying literary craft and like a classic is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. So that is the overall in-depth tour of my personal curriculum for this fall. Again, I'm fully aware this is like a ton of material, and like I know I'm not going to be able to get through all of this stuff in a 3 or 4 month time span, but this is kind of going to be an ongoing project for me, and I'm going to be like reading, taking notes from, and learning from all of these works. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be reading every single one of them, but I just wanted to compile all of my resources into one spot and take notes on what I do find really speaks to me. So yeah, that is kind of like my overview for my Foundations of Writing personal curriculum and the ways that I am going to be learning to become an author. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you took any inspiration from it, I would absolutely love to know. And you can do this for whatever you want to do in life. Just to let you know, if you want to learn anything in life, you can create your own self-directed personal curriculum to learn how to do whatever you want in life. So never limit yourself, and you can do anything, okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like writing emoji if you made it this far, and I will see you guys in my next video. Peace and love, everyone. Bye.